like to call this meeting to order. Roll call, please.
Commissioner Lee,
Here.
Commissioner Oblea,
Here.
Commissioner Patel,
Here.
Vice Chair Fang,
Here.
Chair Charleston.
Here. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. Karen, you want to start us off, please?
Ready, begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Public comment at this time?
We have not gotten any.
None? Thank you. Additions or deletions to the agenda?
No, sir, but before we start, I wanted to just, so I don't forget, introduce two new people tonight. On your far left is Brianne Reyes, and then next to Kanika is Melinda Lim. They're making their first presentations to the commission tonight, so be harsh with them.
We will.
Welcome. Consent calendar?
Motion to approve.
A second.
Do we need to go down each one?
No, sir. You can make a motion on the entire consent calendar.
Okay, roll call, please.
Commissioner Lee,
Aye.
Commissioner Oblea,
Aye.
Commissioner Patel,
Aye.
Vice Chair Fang,
Aye.
Chair Charleston.
Aye.
Motion passes 5-0.
All right, let's jump right into it with Project PLN 17-20001, specific plan amendment for the Goodman-Bircher Commerce.
And Mr. Chair, Kanika Kith is going to give that staff report. We also have the applicant in the audience.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Norris. Good evening, Mr. Chair and member of the Commission. The project before you this evening is a request by Goodman to amend Chapter 4 and 2 of the Goodman Commerce Center specific plan. Amendment to Chapter 4 is to modify the standard for freeway sign. An amendment to Chapter 2 is to require a conditional use permit for indoor amusement and entertainment facility. The sign here, shown on your left, is a drawing of what's currently allowed in the SP, which is an 800 square foot sign area that's held up by 2 pylons up to 75 feet high. The sign here on your right is what the applicant would like to install, a larger sign face of approximately 1,500 square feet. This new sign would not be any taller or any wider than what's currently allowed in the SP. In order for the applicant to install this sign, several changes had to be done to Chapter 4 in the specific plan. That is to increase the allowable sign area to 1,500 square feet and remove the language about limiting the number of tenant advertising on the sign. Amendment to Chapter 2 came up because recently the applicant received a request from someone to put in a dance hall at the business park on Belgrave. A dance hall is listed as an indoor amusement entertainment facility shown here on the 3rd row as currently permitted. In most cases, the potential impacts such as noise and traffic that these uses would create are similar to those created by performing venue that are listed here in the 1st row, which are typically require a conditional use permit. Both the applicant and staff agree that a dance hall at this location is not appropriate because of the adjacent residential neighbor on Belgrave. Therefore, for consistency and to ensure that such uses do not disrupt residential neighbors on Belgrave and other tenants in the business park, staff recommends that indoor amusement and entertainment facility be changed to conditionally permitted in the business park. This change would allow the Commission to review these type of uses prior to operation. Staff recommends that the Planning Commission make a recommendation to City Council to approve the requested changes. the commission, if the commission doesn't wish to recommend approval of the requested changes, here are some other options for the commission. This concludes staff presentation. Staff and the applicant are prepared to answer any question from the commission. Thank you.
Thank you, Kenitha. Any questions for staff at this time from the commission? Josh?
Quick question. As you mentioned, Kanika, I think you mentioned that the height, it looks like, yeah, the height and the width, it's still the same. It's just that the pylons are basically going away, right?
Yes. So as you can see, the height would still be the same, and the new sign would actually be a little bit skinnier than what's currently allowed. The only difference is that instead of having the pylon base, the sign goes all the way to the ground.
Okay. Thank you.
Karen, questions?
Yeah, I have a question. On the pylon sign, there was a 4-tenant maximum. On this new sign, the freeway sign, is there a maximum tenant allowed on there? Tenant signage?
The applicant is requesting to remove that limitation, but the sign here shown on the right is what they want to build, and that's going to probably include 1, 2, 3, is that 5, 6 tenants? Well, the applicant can answer more question about that, how many tenants they wish to go on to the sign.
So we don't have a minimum or maximum size that the tenant signage could be?
No.
Okay. Thank you.
Howard? Okay, so my question to staff would be, when I did some research on freeway signs, it basically said a standard freeway sign is 14 feet high by 48 feet wide, 800 square feet was what it showed when I looked at it. And then it said anywhere from 20 to 100 feet high. So we're 75 feet high, you know, I see the width, and my question kind of runs in line with what Commissioner Oblea asked, is there going to be the 23 feet at the bottom, is that considered dead space, in other words? So they will not be allowed to advertise on that 23 feet?
No, that's not part of the regulations. They could advertise all the way down, but at a certain point, it becomes too low, and it's really just structure that's holding the rest of the sign higher up.
Okay, and then my question runs in line, again with Commissioner Oblea, is, I'm not saying we need to have a set amount of, you know, listings that they can have on there for tenants. It's a big, big project. There's a lot of office space there, and I'm assuming that, in whether it's right or wrong, that some of those people there are going to want their name on that board there. So, as far as aesthetics, it's not going to change a lot because the size isn't going to change a lot. But do we feel at any point that there's a reason we should say you can have 10 on each side or 12 on each side, or is that up to them? Because you're right, if the size gets too small, then you won't be able to read it anyway as you drive by.
Yeah, you know, I would ask the applicant that, but I think our thinking was in that direction, that they're not going to put tenant identification on that's a foot tall, because you can't see it. That whoever puts their name on the sign is
Okay.
going to want it to be readable. So
Yeah.
that's where we kind of landed on why come up with a number when theoretically they're going to want tenants that you can actually read and identify.
Okay. Well, then at this time, I'd like to open up public comment, public hearing, and we would like to hear if the developer has something he'd like to add.
Good evening, Commissioners. Pleasure to see you this evening, and some of you I saw this morning, and just have to tell you, you guys should all be very proud of that fire station. It was really moving to be part of that presentation and dedication, and it's a wonderful, beautiful facility, and I think it will serve the community well. Commissioner Lee, it's nice to meet you or see you. I've been here for a long time, and welcome to the commission. So, getting back to the subject at hand and the pylon sign, The issue has been, and I apologize that we're here talking about this after we've had several amendments to the specific thing, but the reality is, to your point, Darrell, this is being driven by the retailers that we're talking to. As you can imagine, the retailers that we're negotiating with to come to the Senate, with the announcement of the Costco thing are big names, and they want to have their sign on the freeway. So this is a version that we're working through to try to figure out how to get the maximum number of tenants on the sign without having it look cluttered and ugly. So when going through this with staff, we said, let's just make the entire sign 75 feet by 25 feet considered sign area on both sides, and that's how we got to the 1,500. So, of course, I don't plan to come to the staff for approval before it gets built.
Any questions for the applicant?
No.
Okay, thank you. So then another question to staff would be, well, I want to close the public hearing.
Do we have any public comment?
Do we have any public comments? Did anybody fill out a sheet?
No, sir.
Okay, thank you. And I'll close the public hearing. Then the final question I would have for staff then, as we promote this forward or ask to put this to vote, so we're asking to go to 1,500 feet on the sign, and then we want to change the permission of an entertainment to conditional use.
That's a good summary, yes.
That's the only two things we're,
And you're taking off the limit that says the freeway sign can only have 4 tenants on it.
Okay.
We're taking that out.
okay. So then at this point, can I get a motion, please, so we can move this forward?
Can we do these separately, Chapter 1 and Chapter 4 separately,
If you'd like.
please?
Okay, then let's start with the first one.
Mr. Chair, for purposes of discussion on, to take them separately, your first discussion and vote would be to amend Chapter 4 to modify the standards for the freeway sign.
Okay, can we get the verbiage up there one more time, please, on how we want to push that? Can we get a motion on Chapter 4, please?
I'll make a motion to amend Chapter 4 to modify the standards of the freeway sign.
Second.
Roll call, please.
Commissioner Lee,
Yes.
Commissioner Oblea,
Aye.
Commissioner Patel,
Aye.
Vice Chair Fang,
Aye.
Chair Charleston.
Aye.
Motion passes 5-0.
Okay, can I get a motion, please, for Chapter 2?
Can we have some more discussion on that?
Sure. With the staff?
Yes. So I'm a little challenged with entertainment being in a business park, which is generally business, light industrial. And I'm just looking at permitted uses between retail. To me, I'm thinking this goes, a dance room, a ballroom is part of a hotel addition, expansion, where generally hotels have some sort of catering and room. And so I'm looking for staff. I don't even know if I'm comfortable with a conditional use, let alone it being in a business park. So can we talk a little bit about the current zoning of why it wouldn't be expected to be in a retail setting instead of a business park?
An indoor amusement is currently allowed in the retail setting as permitted by right. And then currently it is also permitted by right in the business park land use category. The only area that requires conditional use permit is in the industrial park. So what staff is requesting for is to change this from permitted to be a conditional use permit requirement, so that if this type of uses come up in the future, we can bring the project back to the commission for consideration. Whereas currently it's permitted by right. That means they would just have to come in with their building plan and its approval by staff.
So I've been on this commission from day one, so did I miss a vote somewhere that this sort of amusement entertainment facility would even be allowed in a business park compared to retail?
Well, that was part of the approval of the specific plan. So as originally
So
approved in
from
20...
when Goodman had the specific plan like 3 years ago or something?
When
which
it was
I-
adopted in 2014, this is the way it was written.
Really?
So we went through, what was it, a year ago? So about a year ago, we cleaned up some other
Right. I
pieces of the
remember.
permitted uses, but we didn't attack this one. And it didn't really come on our radar screen until a dance hall use contacted Ward. And then he called me and said, what do you guys think about this? And we, as Kanika said, we mutually agreed it's really not something we just want to allow in the business park. Now, I would point out, Mr. Chair, if you look in the zoning code, we have almost exactly the same land use description of indoor amusement and entertainment, including dance halls. And in the zoning code, that's permitted in our retail zones, but not anywhere else. So this is a little bit more permissive than, even as a conditional use, it would be more permissive than the zoning code. So if you wanted to simply mirror the zoning code, you would just take anything out of that box or business park or put an X and say it's not allowed. That would be consistent with...
Well, that's our options, in other words.
That's another option, would be to
Right.
recommend to the council that you just make it not permitted. And at some point, fairly soon, it's going to be moot anyway, because Goodman is being very successful in leasing up the business park with more traditional business park uses, and there won't be any question about having a dance hall, because there won't be any place left for it.
Well, that's kind of my concern, is having a entertainment area in a business park, which we don't have a lot of opportunity in this city for our small businesses. And, you know, in addition to the noise and it being across the street from residential, and I would love to see it on the north side of the development in the retail section. And I guess you know, again, next to a hotel area, and just, I mean, from a CVB perspective, I just don't know that I see it as a use in a business park based on our definition of what would be in a business park. And so I guess, fellow commissioners, that would, I was on the commission back then, and like you said, it wasn't necessarily on the radar. Until this came up, I was just surprised that it was even permitted, let alone for condition.
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
that was staff original thought, that maybe we just don't allow in the business park. But for the Goodman specific plan, there's an area that's between the North Retail and the business park that is a mix of commercial and business park. So this type of use may not be appropriate for this business park that's along Belgrave, but it may be appropriate for the development that's between the North Retail Center and this business park, which also have a business park land use category.
Yeah, and I would agree with that. I mean, all I'm thinking is, as long as it still comes in front of us, we can decide where it's going, what they're going to do, because I would hate to tell somebody that says, I'd like to give dance lessons. I don't think there's anything wrong with that. If they can work a deal out with, you know, Goodman and rent it, I hate to tell them no. So I think it should be up to them to at least bring it forward and let us decide. So changing it from permitted to condition, I don't have an issue with it.
Yeah.
Mr. Chair?
Please.
When they approached you, a dance hall is a wide variety of different types of businesses. So is it a school that approached you, or is it a nightclub type atmosphere that approached you for this? Do you have any idea?
We don't. Maybe the applicant might be able to answer that question, but it was a request that came to the phone, and they said they wanted to do a dance hall, but we didn't go into detail. We pretty much talked to the applicant, and the applicant went back and told the person that they're not leasing it to them. So that was how we were able to not let them come into the business park. And this is the reason why we're bringing this forward.
I see.
Mr. Chair, so correct me if I'm wrong, but it could be some kind of dance studio type of thing, or it could be like a nightclub type of thing.
Yes, this
Okay.
dance hall might be like more of a nightclub
'Cause that's
type
a
of thing.
big difference.
That's a big
true.
difference.
And Mr. Chair, just keep in mind, and those are good distinctions, that's why if it was conditionally permitted, you'll be able to use that, think of that and say, okay, this is a different use. And because it's near a sensitive use like residential, you can make conditions or conditionally approve it or not based on that. So it gives you a lot more leverage.
Agreed. Questions?
This is more to satisfy Commissioner Patel's question. I mean, like a laser tag facility for children, that would be under entertainment use, right?
Yes.
So it's basically just, if, these businesses were to come, we would have more control. It gives the developer more options and gives us more options for control as well.
Well, it does, and it also gives you the ability, because you have to make findings. If you think you have the right use in the wrong place, then the commission can deny that application.
A quick question for staff. Since it is a specific plan amendment, can we put conditions later on CUP on a specific plan to limit operation hours?
If you made this change, then any use that came in to get a CUP, you would absolutely have the ability to put conditions on them individually by use.
Okay, questions answered?
Just to clarify, Kanika, did you say someone approached the developer and the developer said no, they wouldn't allow it?
Yes.
Okay, but right now, the way it's listed, it's permitted, so for control of both the developer and for the city, having conditional use gives us a little bit more authority and leeway.
Correct.
Okay.
You good? Okay, can you put it back up, what we're approving here, please? All right,
Mr. Chairman, I'll move that we amend Chapter 2 to require conditional use permit for entertainment land use.
second, please.
Second.
Roll call?
Commissioner Lee,
Yes.
Commissioner Oblea,
Aye.
Commissioner Patel,
Aye.
Vice Chair Fink,
Aye.
Chair Charleston.
Aye.
Motion passes 5-0.
So, Mr. Chair and anyone in the audience, so this will go now to the City Council. There'll be another noticed public hearing, and we'll forward your recommendation to them.
Thank you. Okay. All right, let's go to 6.2, please. Project number 1600-16-00034. Conditional use permit for on-site sale of alcohol, beer and wine in existing restaurant Luna Grill.
And Mr. Chair, it's my pleasure to introduce in her first appearance here in Eastvale, Brianne Reyes.
Thank you, Mr. Norris. Good evening, Mr. Chair and members of the Commission.
Doing a great job.
The project before you this evening is a conditional use permit for the on-site sale of beer and wine at the existing Luna Grill restaurant located at the Eastvale Gateway North Retail Center. This is an aerial view showing the location of the existing Luna Grill restaurant which is located next to Blaze Pizza in the retail center. The conditions for this project are the same as the conditions for other alcohol sales that were approved by the commission. A few of those conditions are stop alcohol sales 1 hour prior to close of business. Alcohol will only be served inside the restaurant and fenced outdoor patio area, and employees must receive proper training prior to serving alcohol. As presented in the photos, display of alcohol will be behind the cash register counter. This is an illustration showing the existing off-site and on-site alcohol sales in the Eastvale Gateway Retail Center and Cloverdale Marketplace. Luna Grill is shown here in the red dot. The Eastvale Police Department reviewed the request and did not foresee any conflicts with the sales of alcohol at this location. Staff recommends that the Planning Commission approve an exemption to CEQA for the project and approve the conditional use permit, subject to the conditions of approval.
Questions for staff at this time? Josh, please. Any?
I have one.
Karen?
Just 41 and 47, I know we've discussed this before. In the write-up, it says it's beer and wine, no alcohol, but when you look at the cheat sheet of the breakdown between 41 and 47, sorry, looking for it. 41 appears that it allows it.
I see it.
47, do we, or I'm assuming the applicant is requesting with ABC whether they want a 41 or a 47 license?
Yeah, that's really their decision. The difference between the two is a 47, you can have distilled spirits, and 41 is beer and wine only.
Right, but somewhere in the write-up, it seemed to be contradictory that they would allow distilled spirits, but it's a 41. Maybe I read it wrong. Did anybody else see that?
No, I did not. I didn't see that.
Mr. Chair, you might want to confirm with the applicant if they're here which type of sale they're...
Okay, then we'll open up public hearing at this time. Is there any comment? Could we hear from the applicant first, please?
Because the conditions are specific to beer and wine, so we should just make sure.
That's the way I read it, but we'll be
In all our
clear.
restaurants, it's just beer and wine. We do not have.
Right here.
Okay.
I know.
Any other questions for the applicant while he's standing here?
I have none.
No, thank you.
Are we doing just domestic, or are we doing international beers?
Primarily domestic, international. If you need maybe Mexican beers, we may have.
European, whatever, just,
Possibly.
but basically on tap, or
Yes,
bottles?
I believe in this location we'll have 4 on tap.
And no bottles, or you will also have bottles?
No bottles.
Just tap? Okay. Shock Top, Blue Moon? Like, just, you know,
Varies per location.
I hear those are popular choices, so I was just asking for the audience.
And they're Belgian.
Yeah,
I would say international.
I just happen to be 50% Belgian, so not that those are related at all, but, okay. All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Staff, I remembered I was surprised by seeing it, and so I looked twice, so, you know, if staff just wants to make sure, or I'll recheck if I find it, but just for the record.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, I think Commissioner Patel makes a good point. I think we want to make it clear on the record
Yes,
that the applicant has confirmed that it is only for beer and wine sale.
yeah. And not that I
And the
couldn't have
condition says
overlooked
that,
it, but
yeah.
I remember distinctly them talking about that it would be beer kegs, so there would be no storage. They would order the kegs. there would be 3 bottles of wine that would be shown as an example that wouldn't have real wine in them,
Right,
and the
be
wine would
empty.
be under lock and key. So I don't remember seeing any part about that, so sorry. If it's there, though, we do need to make sure that it's beer and wine, and it's listed clearly.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, it is in the title of the conditions of approval. It's a conditional use permit to sell beer and wine.
Right, so
That's very clear.
if that protects us, then we're good with that.
Lastly, I'm just glad that as a condition, the training, because I know that was an issue with another restaurant, and businesses work too hard to have some employee screw something up. So I'm glad doesn't ABC require that training as well? Okay. That's all I have, Mr. Chair.
Okay, then I'll close the,
Any public comment?
any public comment?
Yeah, public comment for or against?
Was there any public speaking?
No, sir.
Paperwork filled out? Okay, thank you. Then we'll close the public hearing, and then at this time, can we get a motion to move this forward?
I'll make a motion, Mr. Chairman, to recommend, staff recommendation that the Planning Commission adopt the resolution to approve an exemption pursuant to CEQA for conditional use permits, and conditional use permit number 16-00034, and approving a conditional use permit number 16-0034 for the sale of beer and wine at the Luna Grill, subject to conditions of approval. That's a mouthful.
Second.
Roll call, please.
Commissioner Lee,
Aye.
Commissioner Oblea,
Aye.
Commissioner Patel,
Aye, I think I found it.
Vice Chair Fink,
Aye.
Chair Charleston.
Aye.
Motion passes 5-0.
And, Mr. Chair, for the audience and the commission, this approval is final unless it's appealed to the city council. So there's a 10-day appeal period, but otherwise, this is essentially done.
Thank you. All right, let's move on to 6.3, project number 17-20004, conditional use permit for the establishment and operation of Eastvale Academy in the North Park Building 7 of the Goodman Commerce Center Business Park located at the northeast corner of Hamner Avenue and Belgrave Avenue. Staff report, please.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, making her inaugural appearance here tonight is Melinda Lim, and Melinda will provide the staff report.
Thank you, Sir Norris. Good evening, Mr. Chair and members of the Commission. The project I'm presenting to you tonight is...
Can you speak into the mic more, please?
Should I start over? Okay. The project I'm presenting to you tonight is for a conditional use permit for Eastvale Academy. The applicant is requesting approval for a conditional use permit for an education center in Building 7 of the Goodman Business Park. The applicant has 2 existing education centers, one in San Gabriel and one in Irvine. The Irvine branch has 90 students in a 6,000 square foot building with 6 designated drop-off and pickup stalls. It offers touring and private lessons and has been in operation for 12 years. Here are some photos to help you get an idea of what is offered at the Irvine Center. With the success of the Irvine branch, the applicant proposes to operate in a similar manner for Eastvale. Eastvale Academy will be open from 8 a.m. to 9 p.m. and will provide tutoring and private lessons in language, math, art, dance, in a 8,304 square foot building. The applicant anticipates 100 to 150 students between the ages of 6 and 17 to attend their center. Shown here is Building 7 of the Goodman Business Park. The applicant will have 2 designated parking stalls for pickup and drop-off directly in front of their business to ensure the safety of the kids. There is also ample parking available for customer use in front of the building. Staff had concerns regarding the timing of events and designated parking and proposed the following conditions: that all related business will be conducted inside the building. Recitals and special events will be limited to certain hours, and the applicant will need to come back in a year for a mandatory review. The proposed use is consistent with what is already analyzed in the EIR for this project, therefore no additional environmental analysis is needed. Staff recommends commissioners approve the CUP subject to conditions of approval. If commissioners decide staff recommendation is not sufficient, commissioners can approve the project with additional changes or conditions, continue a public hearing, and direct the applicant to make revisions, or deny the CUP. This concludes staff's presentation. Staff is available to answer questions. The applicant is also available to answer any questions.
Thank you. Questions for staff at this time? No. Karen?
Oh, wait.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, I have a question.
Go ahead.
For staff, on a 8,000 square foot space, how many parking stalls would there be required for that?
We're going to run the math here for you. Yeah, well, it depends on what it is. If it's professional office, it's 5 per 1,000. So 8 times 5 would be 40 spaces.
40 spaces?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Howard, question? So my question runs in line with, similar to Commissioner Oblea again. So as I read this, we have the 2 parking places that we're going to drop off and pick up children, students, I get that.
Mm-hmm.
But then I started looking at, if we want 90 students, that's a lot of cars. So when you look at the picture that showed the out front area, where's everybody going to park at? If they have a show, or they have, presentations between 6 and 9, I realize most of the other businesses are going to be closed, but maybe not all the kids will present at the same time, but it's going to require quite a bit of parking. And if they run into parking issues in the front, are they going to be going across the street? Are they going to be going to the buildings along Belgrave? I mean, at some point, the cars have to go somewhere. So do we have room for that? That's my only question. Is it going to create a hardship on another business if they have that many kids there?
Well, I can answer for staff. I think you should probably ask someone from Goodman as well. But our thought was, as you correctly pointed out, we've suggested a condition that they can't have those kinds of events until after 6 o'clock, when the other uses that are there, the realtors, those typical kinds of uses are going to be closed. And on weekends, most of those won't be open anyway. So we didn't foresee that was going to be a problem, but I would definitely ask Goodman about that, because they're the ones who are going to own and run the center, and I would imagine that they looked into this issue.
Okay.
I would mention, we do have a recommended condition of approval that gets to the issue of bringing it back for review in a year. And I think it says right now, to determine if additional designated drop-off and pickup stalls are needed. You might want to be just more broad in that condition and just say the operation in general, because that way we could capture both the pickup and drop-off and the parking for the events, and just see how it works after a year.
Okay. Let's open up the public hearing, and could we hear from the developer at this time? Or the business?
I think we might want to have the applicant come up, and then if you have questions for Goodman.
That'd be fine.
Hi, good Unfortunately, because our school system is like a track system, so more than 3 months every year, he has to stay home. He has no school because the tracking system, when the off-track days, he has to go home. So I think not only the students, but also the parents here, everybody who is in the community definitely need a quality educational service for the kids, both benefit the kids and also parents. And our family actually run a successful after-school program since 1995. So even we moved here in Eastville, we still have we have a weekend school program in San Gabriel and also an after-school program in Irvine. So we're very confident we have the experience and also we have goodwill, the passion to open a successful education service here in Eastville.
No, and I think our question is more, I mean, we're very excited that you want to be here. We're very happy you want to be here. Our question more is from your other business experiences that you have right now, what issues have you had with parking as far as, you know, if you have a presentation where 45 students are presenting and half of those parents, one comes at one time, the other comes at another time, somebody coming from work, are you going to have adequate parking? That's our concern right now.
Most of our events are on the weekends, so our two locations are also in the plaza, so we've never had that terrible parking issues.
Retail.
This is a flutter job.
I'm her partner.
Hi.
Okay, from our past experience, we never had running into any of that problem. And actually, at the beginning, we talked to people. They have went to the site. They saw only have 100 people in there. We have plenty of parking, but never really used all of them. It just parents wanting in this situation, from our experience, which is in so many years, they drop their kids and they leave. And then when they come back, with probably 2 minutes, they pick up their kids and they're gone. That's it. We never, ever ran into those kind of problems.
Okay. Is that?
But you said right now your operations in Irvine are after school, right? You're not currently during school hours.
But during the summer, we have summer and Christmas camp. That's like a whole day.
Okay.
But most of the
But not year round, like you're proposing for Eastville.
no,
And currently you're in a retail shopping center for parking.
no, it's similar like this, but the whole plaza is more educational institute. It's like a business park. We call it business park. It's called Irvine Jeffrey Business Park, but they have more school like institution than retails.
Is it off of Jeffrey Road?
Yeah.
Where, okay,
Yeah.
okay.
Mr. Chair, I have a
Question?
question. Yes.
Go ahead.
Yes. How many employees do you plan on having at your school? Employees?
Employees, we will, for the first year, currently, we will have less than 10. We will have a director and a front desk, and then we have teachers, because we have after-school program, and we have art, language, music, and math and English, and also dance teacher. So, for instance, like art, they probably have 2 different classes. So at the same time, we'll have less than 10 teachers.
Yeah.
Okay. And this question could be for both staff and applicant. Whose suggestion was 2 stalls for drop-off and pickup? Was it the city staff or was it the applicant?
That, I believe, came from negotiations between the applicant and Goodman.
And Goodman?
Yes.
So they didn't want to have more than 2 stalls for?
That's our
Designate.
understanding, but you should probably ask them that directly.
Okay.
Actually, we got, I think, permission for 25 spots, right? Parking.
Well, yeah, but Mr. Chair, our understanding is that the 25 spaces are spaces that are allocated to this tenant space. Only 2 of them are proposed to be specifically designated only for pickup and drop-off.
That makes
The other
sense.
25 are more just kind of a term of the lease and how many spaces they're assured of having in that parking field. But only 2 of them would be specifically marked for pickup and drop-off for this particular use.
I just don't understand why there couldn't be more than just 2. I'm just afraid that there might be some type of congestion around that, and that's close to the entry point at that particular part of the park, and it could create some kind of traffic jam with students parking, or parents parking perpendicular to the stalls, and you know what I mean, and running in to get their child and coming out. So if we'd have some kind, if we had a few more designated stalls for drop off and pickup, I think that might be better for traffic purposes.
So these are great questions, and the same questions that we asked before we signed a letter of intent with them with the leases. And so, as they shared, I did go spend some time observing their facility in Irvine and Jeffries. And then, just to put it in context, there's 36,000 feet of multi-tenant space, and there's roughly 100 parking stalls allocated to the multi-tenant for those 3 buildings along here.
I would say those, aren't there 14 condos supposedly what we approved? So how, you said that's 36,000?
36,000.
Okay, that was one of my
100 parking
questions.
stalls.
Okay.
Yeah, so it's marked at slightly over 3 per thousand. So,
And it looks like they're taking up 5 suites.
correct.
Okay.
So they're in 5 suites, just a little bit 2,000.
And if we, and after a year, and we find that they might need more than 2 designated parking stalls to accommodate traffic, would that be a problem for
Yeah,
good?
just so everybody understands, 100 parking stalls is in common, so it's shared for all the tenants.
Yes, I understand.
So we asked them, we said, what do you think in terms of, do people come and to pick up their kids and go inside and watch part of the class or whatever they're doing? And they said, no, we think 2 would be sufficient. So if we determine that they need 4, 5, 6, or 10, I think that we can certainly accommodate that.
Oh, very good. Thank you. That's all.
Any other questions for the applicant or developer? Okay, thank you. Any final questions for staff?
Yeah.
Go ahead.
You want me to start?
Yep.
So this kind of goes back to my original, being a business park. Eastvale, definitely, we have munchkins galore. I think Cambridge is over by Albertsons. I'm not sure if there's a location still down over by Masala House off of Hamner. I know Kumon is across the freeway, so that there's a demand. I too am very concerned about the drop-off, again, for the other businesses that are going to be there. I am obviously the only female being a mother here, and I've dropped off my kids at grade school and junior high and high school. 2 drop-off spots, it's not going to be enough. I mean, we have parents that can't even follow regular traffic signs of right in, right out, no left turn. And I'm sure, Helen, you've seen that here at Rosa Parks, especially across the street. I mean, it's crazy. And to have a business come in, I think we all want to make sure that they're successful from day one. And to go through all the TIs that they need to do, and even with a 1 year, I just want to make sure that, I mean, you live here, so there's definitely a need. But the two stalls, I will almost say 100%. That's not going to be enough as part of the plan. It's 25% of the, again, I'm kind of going back to this whole business park. Being that it's an academy, a school, it makes a little bit more sense. We've got 6 elementary schools in the city, and 5 out of the 6 are on tracks. And so the fact that this would be an excellent opportunity for when those kids are off track. What do you do with them? Parents often have to take off from work, and, you know, how do you give childcare? Our median age in this city is because we have more 6 to 12-year-olds than we have 12 to 25-year-olds. But the parking, I don't know that that can be part of a condition, but my fear is that the business owner goes through all these TIs and then come back in 1 year, and I can almost guarantee the issues that are going to be had. And I don't want to see them in a year, and then we say, oh, by the way, this is the wrong location. You really should be on the north side, northern part in the retail area where you do have a retail parking spot and you can have 200, because parents don't take 2 minutes to drop off the kid. The kid forgets the bag, and then they have to go back and get stuff, and then they come in. It's not a 2-minute drop off. And hopefully you're very successful and you do have 100 kids. You know, that's a great problem to have. I just think we need to nip it in the bud before we approve something that only allows 2 designated spots. Especially if you have 10 teachers, there goes 10 out of your 25. Now you're down to 15.
Okay, I hear you, so now, do you have a recommendation? Do you want 4 spots for drop-off? Because at this point here, I don't think it's up to us to decide what the applicant and what the developer have decided. I think for us, we need to decide, is this a good location for them? And if 2 parking spots to drop off kids is not enough for safety and you want to increase it, do you have a number in your head? I think we need to move there.
Initially, I don't even think it's a good spot. It goes back to my original comment with the previous hearing, is as a business park and what we're truly looking for, you know, for businesses and areas for them to start out and grow. You know, this isn't just an evening and a weekend type of a business. This is 6 days a week, maybe 7 days a week. And it is the safety, the small delivery trucks. It definitely needs more than 2, but I question whether or not it's even in the right spot, but that's not necessarily my decision.
Okay, so again, then I would ask you, what do you recommend? You think 4 spots, 5 spots? I mean, there's 25. You know, do we want to designate 25% of their parking for drop-off and pickup? We need to come up with something that we can give to the council to look at. So if we all agree 2 is not enough, would we all agree that 4 is enough? And then let council look at it. You're right, it is not our decision to decide if this
Mr.
is
Chair,
the best place.
actually you are. You're making a final decision tonight.
Oh, we are?
Yes, this is not going to
This
recommend.
doesn't go to,
No.
okay, then you're right. Then we need to come up with, what do we recommend for drop-off and pickup?
Actually, before we do that, I have a clarification here. So from my experience in seeing academies like this, I'm going to use maybe a loose example. Like a place like Applebee's would probably take up more traffic than an establishment like this, correct?
Well, yeah, if only because most of the people go to Applebee's and they're there for half an hour or an hour, right?
Because this business is more, I mean, in my opinion, would lean more towards a restaurant type of operation as far as parking goes than what we see at our elementary schools and high schools.
It's conjecture. I don't know if we
I mean,
can
that's what I've seen. I mean,
compare it
it's
to-
literally you drop off the child and they take the lesson and you pick them up, and then the 2 designated spots are just like curbside pickup, for example, right? You know, they go and, you know, it prevents people from parking or taking too much time in a parking space,
Mhm.
right? And we have the conditional use permit for a year, and we can recommend, based off of your recommendation, Mr. Norris, about it being more general.
Yeah, I think we would recommend the condition number 10, just have it come back generally for a review of its operations in a year, and give the commission the ability to make adjustments at that time. But I think the chair has asked on that one specific issue, which is condition number 9. It says 2 stalls. Do you want to use 2 as a starting point or some other number and come back in a year?
Mr. Chair,
Go ahead.
Mr. Chairman?
Please.
I think that 2 is going to be not enough, but I'm willing to let it run its course for a year, see what happens. As far as parking stalls in total, they have the stalls in the back. Employees can park in the back. There's back doors. They could come in through the back door. The front has plenty of stalls for parents to drop off. There's 2, but they could use the other ones if they have to, if those are occupied. It's not like that's the only ones they have to use. And they have like more than 10 stalls in the front that they could pull in and park in and drop off their kids and then leave. I mean, I'd say let's, and as far as a educational center for a business park, that's the norm for many business parks. You see those all over the place. So it's a resident, small business. I see no problem with it. And if there's any problems with parking, we could correct that in a year. And Goodman's willing to work with us and cooperate, and I see no problem with it.
Mr. Chair.
Comments?
Yeah. Can I make a comment? As one of the product of one of these institutions, I've experienced it many times that there was, both on a weekend, on a weekday basis. I've never ran into, or my parents have never ran into, any issues that are related to parking. This is actually the first time I've heard that we actually have a concern about parking on a business like this, and to that extent, the drop off and pickup. But if the commission feels that in terms of drop off and pickup, I'm willing to, make it more than 2. But in my personal experience and personal opinion, I think 2 is enough. And let's see what happens with it. But in terms of parking and the hours of operation, I've yet to see any big conflict between other businesses in the business park and its surrounding area. So that's just my personal comment.
Thank you. Howard? Okay, let's put this to vote then.
I have a clarification question.
Go ahead.
For the applicant, what percentage of your students are between ages 6 and 12?
I need to open up the public hearing again then if she's going to come forward, so.
I think maybe 50%, because we still have a lot of the big kids. You say age 6 to 12, right?
Yes.
Yeah, because that's the age that you require parents to park, come in, and sign them in and out.
Well, we're projecting, hopefully, mostly, 50%. But this is all really depends, we don't know, from our past experience, that might,
I would think in Eastville, you'd have at least that with so many munchkins just in the city.
Right.
That I would think that you would. And your classes are generally 60 minutes, so are they on the hour?
60 minutes or 1.5 hours, depending on the cost.
Okay. Okay.
So there's, in all the other facilities we have very rare case of parents waiting for their kids. Normally they go shopping, they do their chores, they come back to pick up. So that's, Mr. Lee says, we never had that problem.
In Irvine?
In Irvine, yeah. Well, we also have that in San Gabriel and Arcadia, different locations.
Okay.
Okay, thank you. All right, we'll close the public hearing again. And then I believe at this time, then we're ready to roll this for a vote. So can I get a motion, please?
I'll make a motion to approve with set aside of stalls of 4 for 1 year with a CPU where it can be revisited at that time for a general review.
I'll second.
Roll call, please.
Commissioner Lee,
Aye.
Commissioner Oblea,
Aye.
Commissioner Patel,
Aye.
Vice Chair Fang,
No?
That's fine?
Yeah, no.
Chair Charleston.
No.
Motion passes 3-2.
Start
So-
moving dirt.
So, Mr. Chair, again, for the audience and the commission, your decision is final unless it's appealed to the council. So there is, again, a 10-day appeal period, and after that, this approval is final.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you for coming to the city. We really do appreciate that. That's exactly what we were looking for when we asked Goodman to put the business park in. We want businesses to come. So welcome.
Best of luck. You'll be filled before you know it. Can almost guarantee it.
Okay, let's move to 6-4. Project number PLN 16-00029 and 16-00030, and that is the general plan amendment and change of zone for the Van Leeuwen property.
And Mr. Chair, Yvette Noir is going to make the presentation on that application. I believe we also have the applicant in the audience as well.
Okay, so staff report, please.
Thank you, Mr. Norris. Good evening, Mr. Chair and members of the Commission. Tonight, we're presenting a project that involves a general plan amendment and a change of zone at the Van Leeuwen project site. The proposed project includes a general plan amendment from medium-density residential to medium-high density residential, and a change of zone from heavy agriculture to general residential to allow development to be consistent with the general plan land use designation. The project site is located at the southeast corner of Citrus Street and Scholar Way, highlighted in red. So back in 2016, the applicant filed an application with the city to change the general plan land use from what the general plan currently allows to a maximum of 221 units, as shown by the left and the middle bars on this slide. When the prior application went to Planning Commission in December 2016, the commission vote was a tie, so no recommendation could be made to the council. In January 2017, the council voted to take the application off the calendar so the applicant can revise the application. The last bar on the graph shows the revised application before you tonight, with 126 units as the maximum development potential for the site. As you can see, the increase in maximum development potential from what the general plan currently allows to what the applicant is currently proposing is more modest of an increase at 47 units. This is a reduction of 95 units from what the county originally approved in 2010 and what the applicant initially applied for last fall. One of the concerns raised by Planning Commission and City Council was traffic. This request is a general plan amendment and a zone change. So the traffic analysis that has been done is at a macro level, appropriate for a general plan level analysis. Therefore, the original traffic study looked at 2040 conditions, which include the 4-lane roadway width identified in the general plan. The traffic analysis conducted by Urban Crossroads for the original application looked at the addition of 221 units and determined that the increase in traffic would not result in a lower level of service or the need for additional roadway width beyond what is required in the general plan. Urban Crossroads reaffirmed that the current proposal of 126 units also does not result in a lower level of service or additional lanes beyond what is required in the general plan. What this means is that until the Van Leeuwen site develops, the area highlighted in green, north of the project site, will remain a bottleneck on Citrus Avenue. The area in blue on Scholar Way will be built when Phase 2 of the community park is built. The general plan requires 4 lanes on Citrus. The existing roadway configuration of 2 lanes will continue to result in poor traffic conditions until the required lanes are built when the project site is developed. Another concern that came up was whether the addition of traffic from the STEM Academy would affect the conclusions of the analysis conducted by Urban Crossroads. Urban Crossroads conducted a subsequent analysis on the STEM Academy impacts. They used a study done by Corona Unified School District, traffic impacts associated with the school, and concluded that even with the STEM Academy, future development at the Van Leeuwen site would not result in lower level of service or the need for additional roadway width beyond what is required by the general plan. Additionally, to help alleviate immediate traffic impacts at the STEM Academy, construction of 2 new traffic signals on Scholar Way at 68th Street and Baltimore Street will help to alleviate traffic and is scheduled to be implemented at the end of 2017 before the school opens in 2018. Another issue that was brought up in previous hearings is school capacity. Corona Norco Unified School District was notified of the project prior to each hearing, and they have not indicated that the proposed general plan and zoning changes would cause any impacts to school capacity. In accordance with CEQA, an initial study negative declaration was prepared for this project and concluded that the project would not result in any significant environmental impacts. Therefore, no mitigation measures are required. Staff recommends that the Planning Commission recommend approval of the general plan amendment and change of zone to the City Council. However, if the Commission doesn't wish to approve this project, these are some other options available to the Commission. Staff is prepared to answer any questions from the Commission. The applicant is also available to answer any questions, and a representative from Urban Crossroads is also here to answer questions related to traffic.
Thank you. We'll start out with staff. How's that? So,
Sounds good.
questions for staff at this time? Josh?
Yeah, so I have a question. So I was kind of struggling with this a bit as a planner because land use designation change, which is general plan amendment, usually comes when there is a development application also attached to it. This one seems to be just a designation change. And so going back a little bit, I did some research at the county and found that this was changed to an HDR, high density residential, in the general plan back right before our city got incorporated. So given that history, so I was kind of puzzled, why are we doing a general plan amendment? So as a planner, it's really hard to kind of conclude on why staff is recommending a change at this time.
Yeah, well, we didn't get into that too much in this presentation. That we did it in more detail, I think, before you were on the commission. Basically, what happened was, and this is part of the fun of starting a new city. Right before incorporation, like mid-September of 2010, the Board of Supervisors approved a general plan amendment. So, Mr. Van Leeuwen received an approval to change the general plan designation for his site to the high-density residential. We became a new city then, about 2 weeks after that, and the county gave us, basically, here's the keys to the car, so to speak. Among those things was a general plan map in digital form and printed form. They hadn't had time between mid-September and October 1st to change the map. So they gave us what they said was the general plan map, and we started using that. We used it for 2 years until we adopted the Eastvale general plan. So even if we're basically using an incorrect map for those first 2 years, but then we adopted a map that looks like the one we have today. So with the council's action to adopt that map in 2012, it wiped out what the county had done. So we're back to the situation before the county had approved the change in September of 2010. So 2015, early 2015 was really the first time we had ever even learned about this, and that's when we started discussing the whole thing with Mr. Van Leeuwen and ended up kind of where we are now, which is applying to rechange the land use.
Okay.
So that got us to the end of last year with Mr. Van Leeuwen's request to have the same designation that the county had approved. So as Yvette noted, that came here to the commission. There was a split vote, so really no recommendation went forward. The council looked at it. They were a little bit nervous about going all the way to the high density. They said, well, let's take it off calendar and staff applicant go think about it some more. So we did that, and Mr. Van Leeuwen is now back with a modified proposal to increase the density, but not nearly as much. So in a nutshell, that's kind of
Okay.
where we are.
So in this case, the cleanup, it's not really a cleanup anymore then?
No.
It's correct to assume that it's a new proposal basically with a new general plan amendment designation?
It's an entirely new application.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
And, I'm sorry, and to answer your question, there's no requirement here. As you mentioned, quite often we get a project with a rezone or a general plan change. In this case, the applicant is simply looking for new general plan and new zoning. He doesn't intend to develop the property, but he wants to prepare it for that type of development in the future and make his land more marketable.
Okay, so I'll ask the same question to the applicant later on, but to staff, so why? So I'm grappling with the question of why. Why now? Why are we changing the designation? Because I take, when city adopts a general plan or county adopts a general plan, I take that very seriously. And that's it, that's the vision, that's the future of where we're going. So why now? Why are we just changing a color on a map, so to speak? And that's the question I was kind of grappling with personally as a commissioner.
Well, again, it's not a requirement that you bring a development proposal in. It's not unlike, if we're planning large undeveloped areas of Eastvale and this commission would recommend and the council would approve a general plan and a zoning map that covers areas for which there is no development currently proposed. But we think that ought to be the industrial area. This ought to be the retail corner, et cetera. I mean, there's a number of those around town. The Eastvale Marketplace was zoned for retail years before we actually got a retail application. So it's not uncommon. And I think, and you can, again, ask the applicant, I think he's simply looking for more or less what he already had approved and just looking to, when he's ready to sell, have land which is already zoned for a designation that he thinks will be more marketable.
Okay.
Any other questions for staff?
Yes, Mr. Chairman. For staff, and it's probably not directly connected with the Van Leeuwen project or request, but in the staff report, there was mention of a water well, phase 1 of the park that was supposed to be moved and wasn't, and they gave permission not to be moved till a later time. I'm just curious, will that water well be moved by completion of phase 2 of the park, or is it going to be when the Van Leeuwen property is developed?
I believe it's tied to the Van Leeuwen project. So whenever this property develops, then they'll move the well site and widen that little piece of citrus.
Is that right there on the eastern tip of his property?
Yes.
Where the
Right.
bull rubs his horns against the fence?
Yeah, let's put the aerial back up here. You can see it. Yeah, actually, I think our yellow line may go a little bit too far to the east, but you can see right up there in that corner
Yeah.
is where the well site is.
Okay, so that that won't happen until the road gets widened from the Van Leeuwen project in the distant future.
Yeah, I think we allowed JCSD to defer that on the theory that it's the most expensive part of their widening, and it doesn't really help without the rest of this widening, so we tied those two together.
So that won't interfere with the driveway there, the widening of that driveway coming in, and the parking that will be increased on Phase 2 of the park? It won't
No.
interfere with it? Okay, thank you.
Karen, you said none? Howard, questions? Yeah, I have no questions. So at this time, we'll open up the public hearing, and if the applicant would like to come forward, was there any comment sheets filled out? Would anybody like to speak?
No, sir.
Okay, so would the applicant like to come forward?
You're the applicant.
You're the applicant.
Unless your last name's Smith.
My name is Bill Van Leeuwen, and I'm the owner of the property. At one time, I thought, about the first round, I thought it was the city that was the applicant. But now I understand.
Well, we're kind of partnering on this, but we'll let Bill speak.
First of all, we have no intention of doing anything other than trying to get it back to where it was supposed to be. And evidently, that was not going to happen by a vote here. And kind of the feeling of the city council, rather than getting dug down and dirty, I agreed to reduce it from high density, medium high density. That's by the way somebody is shopping for property, heavy values property quite a bit. That being said, we have no intention of going anywhere. This past Sunday, we had 80 family members at our home. That's been going on for 40 years. We'd like to continue that as long as we physically are able to do that. If you have any questions, and I guess, Mr. Lee, I have to say what's going on. JCSD needs to bring that road through on our property, and I have to give them an easement. At that time, we found out that the designation was not what it was supposed to be. And I have dug my heels in, and I said, I'm not giving them that easement until such time as I get mine back. And so that's, you asked why, that's why it's happening now. Failing to get that done, it's probably going to wind up with condemnation, and it's not somewhere any of us want to go. Any other questions?
Anyone? Thank you, sir. All right, so closing comments. Would anyone like to comment on this before we put it for a vote?
Have we closed the public hearing? Have we closed the public hearing?
Josh?
I have a comment. So, being new, I guess you guys all had your discussions on this matter. It's tough. I would have actually, if I were a planning commissioner before, I would have actually approved it because it's a cleanup. And I'm actually for, I know that staff and, the previous designations and so forth, I know how hard it is to get those designations. So I would have actually, as a cleanup, I would have actually said yes to the HDR. But now, again, so that's why I'm kind of coming up with this question of, why are we changing it then? And now if it's a new designation that the applicant is proposing, then I think it's better if even, as the applicant said, if he has no intention of selling or he has no intention of moving, why propose a designation change at this point? So, that's how I kind of view this project, in my opinion.
Comments? None? Comments?
I would just say that, the Van Leeuwens went through this process 7 years ago with good intent, that going through that process for how long, the county did what they were supposed to do, and, timing, and oops, it's unfortunate it happened, and, you know, they're trying to move on with their life and do this for their property that's in their family while they are of mind and spirit, and it's one less thing they have to worry about in the past, and it's unfortunate it took 7 or 10 years, who knows how long you had to go through the county to even get it there, but I think this is great as proposed. That's all.
Okay, then can I get a motion, please? We'll put this to vote.
Make the motion to approve as presented.
I'll second.
Do we need to list everything, or is that?
No, we can go for the total recommendation.
As presented.
Commissioner Patel made a motion on
Okay,
staff recommendation.
I'm good if you're good.
Yes.
Or
Okay,
can I
roll
make a
call,
counter
please.
motion?
Pardon me?
Can I make a motion?
Well, this motion has to go to vote first. It
Does it?
was motioned and
We didn't
seconded.
get a second, so let's go this.
So this needs, roll call, please.
Commissioner Lee,
No.
Commissioner Oblea,
Aye.
Commissioner Patel,
Aye.
Vice Chair Fang,
Aye.
Chair Charleston.
Aye.
Motion passes 4-1.
So, Mr. Chair, and for the audience, so this is a recommendation to council, so unlike your prior 2 other projects tonight, this will go to council with this recommendation attached. There'll be another public hearing, and the council will make the final decision.
Thank you. Thank you, Bill. Okay, any presentations at this time?
No, sir, other than I think Brianne and Melinda did an excellent job. Kudos to them.
You survived your
Thank you,
first
ladies. You
meeting.
did do an excellent job. Thank you.
We're going to be going to 7-Eleven and buying a couple gallons of Gatorade and pouring it over them, so if you want to come with us, you're welcome to do that.
Big spender. City staff report?
No, sir.
Yes, sir. Just a reminder, next Wednesday at 4 o'clock, I expect all you to be at the ethics training.
I wouldn't miss it.
You will enjoy it. It'll be a very, very entertaining situation, and you'll come out so much more wiser.
We're not gonna have role-playing
So-
situations, right?
See you all then.
Role playing?
Oh, we're not gonna do role-play, right?
No, no role play.
Okay.
No, I'll save you, but there will be a lot of slides just to
Straight
let you know.
theory.
I thought you
Straight
didn't like
theory.
slides.
What's that?
I thought you don't like slides.
Well, on this one here, that's good because it's very graphic.
This is real life stuff.
Yeah, this is real life stuff.
That's what we like. Commission communications, Mr. Lee.
It was great to see everybody at the opening of the fire station. It was really great. Those of you who missed it, you missed a big event. So that's my comment.
Karen?
I just have a question on code enforcement. Part of our, whatever we call our special ordinance of, what do we call it?
Neighborhood preservation
Thank you,
ordinance?
the neighborhood.
Yes.
So if a resident starts digging up their front yard to someday plant a tree, or even though there's caution tape around it, I mean, is there a time frame? Because I know part of it is you're supposed to have a, you know, I think the ordinance says you're supposed to have like landscaping of your neighbors, and so is a year too long for someone to have a 4-foot hole by, you know, 5 by 5 before it part of that ordinance, or is there a time frame, or?
Yeah, that's a good question. I'm not aware of any provision in that zoning code that has a timeline.
Okay.
What we do.
Is that just a code enforcement?
Yeah, what we do look at that is, I think it goes to more the question of, you know, you have to maintain your property in such a way that's similar to the property around you.
Right.
So if it's taking a long time and it's chronically inconsistent with the rest of the property as a work in progress, we can certainly take a look at it. Obviously, then it wouldn't be consistent with the areas around it.
I just couldn't remember, I didn't think there was a time frame, but I know it's been over a year.
You're right.
I
And so
drive past a certain property
you certainly
often.
can take a look at the property.
Okay.
You can get in touch with code and let them know the address, and we can take a look at it. One important thing that you bring up, Commissioner, is that Remember, we inherited the neighborhood preservation ordinance from the county
Okay.
as kind of an immediate consistency, but we are right now in a position where we're starting to make changes to tailor it more to the city of Eastvale, as with the entire code. So it's a work in progress as well.
Because I thought several years ago we were going to try to do more of a marketing campaign because most of the residents didn't even know it existed. So if they don't know it's in existence, how can they either follow it or be in violation? So,
Yeah.
okay.
Actually, it's amazing. A lot of them do know about it. Whenever we get a complaint, they're somewhat familiar with it. There's a couple interesting areas that are very, very common in code enforcement, and that we've been able to track it. And, a lot of them are trash cans, and some of them home occupations. But with the business park coming in, I think there's a lot of hope for those to eventually eradicate. But we're getting a baseline to work with now.
Is the garage sale portion of that ordinance going to start being enforced?
It is all on weekends. We have a specific officer designated on the
Okay.
weekends for those type of signs. And I can tell you, every weekend, there's a ton of them.
Yeah. Okay.
I helped draft that ordinance, neighborhood preservation ordinance for the county. Oh.
We're doing a cleanup.
We're cleaning it up, Mr. Lee.
But to answer your question, Commissioner Patel and Mr. Lee can maybe shed some, there is a 7-day limit on hazardous shrubbery.
Hazardous shrubbery.
So if you have hazardous shrubbery, you've got 7 days to remediate it.
I don't know, Josh wrote it.
I can't remember.
Josh wrote it.
I don't think Josh wrote that one because he would know that hazardous.
Hellfire.
Yeah.
Larry?
I have no communication.
Howard?
Well, actually, on the topic of code enforcement, I wasn't going to mention anything, but I mean, I've seen code enforcement in action in the city. It's a very difficult job.
Yes.
You have to distinct yourself from the person and property because you're dealing with property. And with the resources and from what I've seen, code enforcement is awesome in this city, along with everything else. But since we're on the topic, I mean, I've seen it in action, and they're on things, and if they're not, they will be, because there's restrictions in every city, right? So
It's a thankless job, that's for sure.
yes, yes, definitely. It's dangerous too.
What's that?
He said it's dangerous.
too.
Thankless, yes.
No, and dangerous.
No, when I
It could
talked to
get
him last
dangerous.
week, I thanked him.
You're very thankful.
I was.
Yes.
And I believe we now have like 4 or 6 code enforcement volunteers. Because realtors still don't know or choose not to follow our ordinance
They
for
know.
sign.
You're right, they know. But the signs, they put it right in the handicap spot, right in the corner, when they have an open house.
We still collect a lot of them.
So
Yep.
that's good to hear.
Keep doing it.
Yeah, I have no communications. Thank you, staff, for everything you've done.
Thank you.
Thank you, Bill, again.
Sir, one reminder to the commission, we have a special meeting on May the 3rd. So we look forward to having all of you here, but that's a special meeting, so just don't forget.
Right.
And then another meeting on the 17th.
Okay.
Another
Sounds-
reminder, tomorrow morning for
Truck study.
What?
draft truck study
Yes,
tomorrow morning.
truck study, yes.
I keep reminding everybody because I want everybody to be there.
Is that at 8? That's at 8.
8 a.m.
Who decided 8?
Everybody did. That was the only time that's when we got most people to
It was
agree.
random of who could come.
I'm just wondering. I'll be there. I'm there.
All right.
Okay,
May 3rd?
May 3rd. You good? Meeting adjourned.
Let's keep it